The following is a Cheeky Leprechaun production.
Pop culture is the entirety of ideas.
Me, Mario.
Let the bass kick.
I am the greatest.
Holy eggshell!
I am your father.
This is the Pop Culture Report with Dan O'Kelly.
All right, it's another episode of the Pop Culture Report. Dan O'Kelly, as always. And we're back with a bit of it's sort of hot off the press, this one. I've come jumping straight in on the back of having spent the last 2 days watching Wrestlemania 36, the WWE edition. I spoke about it on last week's show. I said, look, there's some people that listen to this that, their pop culture world is professional wrestling. It's not everyone's cup of tea. If it's not yours, probably don't listen to this podcast. Maybe you've dabbled in it as a kid. Maybe you're like, you know what? In all of the current situation with the world and, finding myself with a lot more time on my hands, maybe I could just dip the toe back into that wonderful world of wrestling. My God, would you have picked a good time to do it? Because here's the thing, right? As you know, there's no sport going on in the world at the moment. Nothing at all. Okay, the closest thing you can get is a bit of sports entertainment, a bit of WWE wrestling. Yes, there's other companies that are still kind of doing shows, but what the WWE did for the first time ever, they pre-recorded Wrestlemania. Now, not only did they pre-record it, but it was also done in front of no audience. Now, Wrestlemania, for those of you aware, is usually an event that has between 70 to 90,000 people. They've pushed 100 before at that Texas stadium, that big football stadium. Anyone in the States listening, any NFL fans might know what I'm talking about. I do not, can't remember it. Anyway, my point being, WrestleMania usually has a certain atmosphere, okay? It's the biggest, it's like grand final day or the playoffs for whatever sport you follow. This is their grand final. This is the big day. It's usually a one-day event, usually a 7-hour day at that, where it's sort of the payoff for the year that has been. So each year there's a big payoff where you get the biggest matches, the big dream matches. You get, old stars like The Rock or not really Stone Cold that much. He can't do it. This year they had Edge, the return of Edge, the rated R superstar Edge. That's my bad Tony Chimmel impersonation, who's a ring announcer for the WWE. For anyone that's still listening at this point, you would have appreciated that, because I imagine you're somewhat familiar, at least with old school wrestling. So that's what I've done the last 2 days, and it's the thing with WWE going ahead. It was one of those ones where you're like, well, should they really be doing this? Is there a need for them to really... Can they not delay WrestleMania? Well, they could have, but it would have thrown out everything else. And it would have been the first time ever that WrestleMania has not gone ahead or gone ahead when scheduled. It's a company being run by an old, senile man. God bless him, because he's given us so much joy over the years. And the company's mission is to provide family entertainment, catering to everybody. That's their aim, is to cater to everyone. Kids, adults, families, whatever it might be. And you can't help but think that, you know what? There is actually a calling, a point, a reasoning for them to have gone ahead with this show. Because what do we need right now? Think about it, the doom and gloom. Why do I keep trying to do this podcast? Because it's a distraction. Not only is it a distraction for me, distraction for anyone that might want to listen to something other than the news, other than having conversation. Oh, God, did you see the latest result? No, you know what? Sick of hearing about it. Don't even really want to say the word at the moment. Everyone's sick of talking about the same stuff. Our lives at the moment are overwhelmed with the pandemic in the world, and it's good to have something else to talk about, something else to distract you, take your mind off it. And WWE this weekend delivered in absolute spades. And it's funny because putting up on my own social media, normally I'll put up things when I'm watching WrestleMania, especially things that I think will be of interest either to a hardcore fan or maybe more so a casual fan, a fan that used to be, that's maybe since distanced themselves from WWE over the years. And I made a point yesterday on day one, and I'll get into this more in depth, but the Undertaker AJ Styles Boneyard match, all right? Now, again, not getting into it too much right now, but I put up on my social media, holy crap, what a match. Something to that effect. And the replies I had from people I know being like, really? Oh, I wonder if I can find somewhere to watch that. I might try and watch that. Like it kind of shows you that people are looking for something. People are wanting that distraction. Something, especially those fans that used to watch it maybe as a kid, or they haven't watched it in some time, or they used to watch it with somebody, they're close to. They're looking at something like, a post about The Undertaker, about this mystical world and magical world of wrestling, and going, that takes me to a good place. There's something fun about that. That's a good distraction. Maybe I'll go lose myself in that for a little while. To my point, WWE did that this weekend, and people went in hesitantly. I went in real hesitantly, thinking, how are they meant to make not only a wrestling show, but a Wrestlemania, the biggest show of their year, the what do they call it? The stage of the Immortals. I can't even think right now. Their biggest event. How are they meant to do that in a way that's going to feel like, yes, this was a good idea to go ahead. This hasn't undermined the whole event moving forward. Did it do a detriment to the event? Is this a WrestleMania we'll want to forget? I am as shocked as anything to report that I was blown away with how good WrestleMania was. Now, obviously, were my expectations tapered a little bit? Probably. Yeah, I think they were. This was the best possible version of WrestleMania we could have got with our current situation. Now, again, they had to pre-record things because where they were filming WrestleMania, in their small performance center that WWE owned, that's the only way they were able to film in a location, is because they had a location, which is a training facility, which they were able to transform into what was a makeshift WrestleMania location. Since then, they were informed by the Georgia state government over in the States. There was a full lockdown, full ban of any form of production, anything that required the amount of people that they require on set to undertake a WrestleMania. Okay, so it was all pre-recorded. Probably, in my opinion, that worked in their favor. Their hand was forced. Now, why? Because they were able to make the matches perfect, amazing, and seamless. The best possible version of each match without any of the variables in place. Now, that also plays into the fact there was no crowd. So what happened when there was no crowd, right? Okay, so first of all, let's think about it this way. If there was a crowd, what would have WrestleMania looked like? All right, well, we now have seen that there was some creative, different matches, such as the Firefly Fun, the hardest match to say ever, by the way, the Firefly Fun House. My goodness. And you go watch John Cena. He tried to cut a promo and he had to slow down when he said it. The Firefly Fun House. There we go. Match, which took place, and that was off location. It was that, and the Boneyard Match were both kind of filmed like movies, like horror movies. That wouldn't have happened. Absolutely, that would not have happened if there was a crowd. WWE's hand was forced to find new creative ways to mix up the hours of content that WrestleMania was going to be in order to keep it engaging, keep it differing, because you can only watch 2 people, 3 people, 4 people in a ring in front of a referee and 2 commentators, no audience, for so long. It does feel kind of stale. So there had to be these glitz and glamour added to these matches in order to dress them up a little bit, make them a little easier to digest. So, with their hand force, what did they serve up? Let's deep dive now on WrestleMania. Let's go through match by match. All right, so first of all, they started off with the women's tag team match. This is night 1 of WrestleMania. So Saturday in the States, Sunday here in Australia. Women's tag team title match, right? It was the Kabuki Warriors versus the team of Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. And, this was a fine way to start. It was sort of I don't know, it was an easing in to the show. I mean, there was the kickoff show, but we don't really need to talk about it. Other than that, though, the Kabuki Warriors and Nikki Cross, they delivered a fine tag team match. It was quite interesting. It was quite entertaining, but it was a normal match, and it sort of set the scene. We've got now a look at our WrestleMania stage. Cool. We're getting an idea. We've got commentary with Michael Cole, of course, who's been doing all play-by-play largely by himself throughout this whole pandemic we're currently experiencing with the limitations put on WWE, but joined by a legend in JBL, who, if you're familiar with JBL's commentary, freaking great. He's so good on commentary, and it was sort of a match that was there to warm everyone up. All right, we're getting an idea. Okay, there are commentators. Interesting. SmackDown's commentators going to be JBL and Michael Cole. All right, cool. We've got this tag team. This is just a normal match. Cool. All right, that's the stage. Cool. All right, I get it. Now, and we did walk away with two new women's tag team champions. Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross won the titles, which I think is their second reign. First ever, two-time SmackDown women's tag team champions. So that was a good match. It was a good match to start. Again, not anything worth diving into too much. What came next was a bit worse. King Corbin. And I don't know how you feel about King Corbin. He's a great heel. This time last year, he was in a high-profile match against Kurt Angle in Kurt Angle's retirement match. He retired Kurt Angle. And he's had a massive year. He's feuded with Roman Reigns for what felt like, years, plural. But coming out on the other end of that, he kind of got the short end of the stick here. This was a throw-together match. I think either 2 weeks ago on SmackDown, they just threw this match together. Elias is who he took on, Elias and King Corbin. And I don't know, there was no real need to get too invested in it, really. Elias went over, and it was to be expected, I guess. And then again, though, it was such a nothing match that if King Corbin had gone over, like he's done a lot, you probably wouldn't have been too upset because it didn't really mean too much. So yeah, power through those first two matches, and then we get to our first marquee match of night one of WrestleMania. And what did we get? We got the Raw Women's Raw Women's Championship match, and Becky Lynch versus Shayna Baszler. Now, this time last year, what did we get? We had Becky Lynch, the meteoric rise of Becky Lynch, who is arguably the biggest star in the WWE right now, ahead of, John Cena and Brock Lesnar. They're not there that often. So Becky Lynch sort of carries that torch. And she's sort of the first ever massive women's wrestling star. And she's huge. Again, she gets better billing and probably better pay than a lot of the men. And she deserves it. So last year, she took on Charlotte Flair, who's also obviously daughter of Rick, but probably the best technical wrestler in the WWE, maybe in the world at the moment in terms of the women wrestlers, and Ronda Rousey. All right, so that was a massive match last year, and it was the first time ever that the women had main evented WrestleMania. And Becky Lynch went over in that match, and she won both SmackDown and Raw Women's Women's Championship titles. Since then, she's held the Raw Women's Championship the whole year. She hasn't lost it. She's been undefeated. And she's been on this huge rise in popularity. And this time, she comes up against Shayna Baszler, who up until maybe November, December, was the NXT Women's Champion. NXT, obviously, what was the former developmental area for WWE, has now become its own brand in itself. And she was the badass. The badass, ass-kicking, for lack of a better term, woman that had the MMA background, similar to Ronda Rousey, just less personality than Ronda Rousey, really. But she was more of a cyborg type baddie. I guess she was always the baddie. All right, she's the bad woman that comes up against the ever-popular Becky Lynch. And, this rivalry's been a bit weird. So Shayna Baszler sort of debuted in, I think it was Jan, and did so coming in to Raw against Becky Lynch. So she came from NXT to Raw, and in doing so, she bit Becky Lynch on the back of the neck, almost like a vampire. It was super weird. Everyone was very critical of it. And since that moment, they've sort of tried to retcon her a little bit in terms of changing her character, that being Shayna Baszler, to the point where she's sort of lost a bit of what made her so popular in NXT, which was that she was just an ass kicker. She was a cage fighter, no shit. Her promos on WWE TV compared to NXT TV have been obviously far more scripted, and to her detriment too. She obviously is not that comfortable doing the promo that is scripted. You can often see her sort of searching in her mind on TV, and that's been a massive critique of hers through a lot of people. But also her ability to perform in front of a big crowd. She did do well at the Elimination Chamber last month, where she was in there against, what did they have in an Elimination Chamber? That was 6 other people? Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, six people. So there was 5 others, I think. And they let her be that sort of cage fighting badass in that. And that was the first time we got to see a bit of that from Shayna Baszler since coming across to Raw. This match was alright. It was okay, but it wasn't great. Becky Lynch did an awesome job in terms of selling the crap out of anything Shayna Baszler did. But also, I thought the match went a bit quick, and I would have liked to have seen Shayna Baszler have a bit more time tormenting and brutalizing Becky Lynch. The roll-up finish in how it finished, with Becky Lynch sort of flipping over and catching Shayna Baszler with the shoulders pinned on the mat out of nowhere. Also, it was very reminiscent of WrestleMania last year, where there was a bit of a roll-up finish by Becky Lynch on Ronda Rousey, and it kind of felt like, it didn't feel like a mistake. It just didn't feel like that's how... It felt flat, I guess. And it felt like after this massive rivalry that they've tried building up for so long, and yeah, it hasn't been that successful, it just probably needed a better, more conclusive finish to the story than that. Yeah, again though, a good match that I thought was pretty decent. It was entertaining, and mind you, I'm a massive mark for Becky Lynch, massive fan of her, and she can do little wrong in my book. So, yeah. The next match though, really, this is where I was pepped up. All right, because here in Australia, when you're watching it, mind you, being in isolation at the moment, there's not a real sense of urgency to get out of bed. So I was sort of like fresh out of bed at about 9 a.m. when this was all happening. And this was the match that sort of snapped me awake, as it certainly seemed to snap every athlete in the match awake, because the Intercontinental Championship match between Sami Zayn and Daniel Bryan was nothing short of hard-hitting. Okay, these blokes laid that shit in to each other. Go back and try and find it. You'd be able to find it maybe on a YouTube or something. These won't be one of the matches that they'll be protective of by copyright, I wouldn't think. I was blown away by how much... I mean, yeah, there's no crowd. There's no crowd there, so it makes it easier for them to do such a thing, but the sound that came from the kicks, the chops, the slaps to the face, the running of each other into bloody commentary tables, everything that they did to each other in this match, you heard, and so much so that you felt it. And that seemed like that's a cliche at this point. It's saying, oh yeah, he laid it in so hard, I felt it. I'm not kidding. Like, there was moments where I was like sort of wincing and cringing a bit, like, oh god, that sounded like it hurt. When you're getting sucked into that point, you know that they're really laying it in. I mean, these are two of the best wrestlers in the world. Sami Zayn, who has been used largely as a manager lately, which has been a huge misstep. And I think WWE are trying to fix that now. And, doing so by putting the Intercontinental Championship on him prior to this, and bringing him back to an in-ring competitor, because he hadn't been in the ring for God knows how long. And Daniel Bryan, who Quite possibly. I mean, it was floating around on Twitter afterwards. Conrad Thompson of various podcasts, wrestling podcasts, said himself, at what point is Daniel Bryan going to enter into the Mount Rushmore of wrestling conversation? Probably the best wrestler in the world. He's one of 3 or 4 that you can make the argument of at the moment. But in terms of longevity and consistency in the ring, and ability to get himself over, well, talk about an underdog. He did it back when I was at WrestleMania. Yeah, I like to get that in there. I've been to a WrestleMania. At WrestleMania 30, so 6 years ago, he got himself over to the point where the fans literally forced WWE's hand to put that friggin' championship on him, and started that whole yes movement. So this was always a match I was looking forward to. Sami Zayn went over, retained his Intercontinental Championship, which, I was all for. To be honest, I would prefer to see that. Bryan doesn't really need the title at this point. He's also probably on the back end of his career, whereas Sami Zayn, this is the first singles title he's ever won in WWE. So I am liking the fact he's the champion, and I'm liking being able to see more of it going forward. Hopefully, anyway. So it was a good match. There wasn't too much interference from the outside. Drew Gulak, who was on Bryan's side, sort of in his corner, was able to take care of Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura. And that sort of, they almost had their own interactions on the outside, which was a bit better than if just Shinsuke and Cesaro were there for Sami and Bryan was by himself, as it becomes predictable. And you're like, all right, well, these guys are going to get involved. Yes, they try and get involved, but by having Drew Gulak there, it sort of allowed them to sort of all interact and not impact too much on the match. Sami Zayn's shit talk in this match was fantastic. Loved every minute of it. The begging and then the mouthing off when he was on top, and Daniel Bryan even throwing in some verbal barbs. Really good. And again, they added something different, and in doing so, at this point in night 1 of WrestleMania, they had themselves top of the card in terms of match of the weekend. And coming out of the weekend, still very much in that conversation. Then we went into the ladder match. And so what happened with this, right? So this is for the SmackDown Tag Team Championships. And if you're not familiar, here's what happened. So this was meant to be obviously a 6-man tag match. There's 3 sets of tag teams. John Morrison and The Miz are your SmackDown Tag Champs at the moment, going into this match, and Kofi Kingston of the New Day, along with Big E, were one team, and Jimmy and Jay, the Usos, were the other team, okay? So that's where we sit going into this match. Then, after WWE has pre-recorded all their SmackDowns and Raws leading up to WrestleMania, they've recorded WrestleMania. Well, sorry, before they recorded WrestleMania, The Miz, one half of the tag team champions, fell ill. And given the current climate, well, they couldn't take any risks. So The Miz was removed from the match. So what do? Again, with the WWE having their hand forced, oh shit, what do we do here? Weirdly, I don't think this has ever happened. I don't think. I could be wrong. Someone will correct me. This became a triple threat match between John Morrison defending his and The Miz's tag team titles on his own against Kofi Kingston of the New Day and Big E sitting out, and Jimmy Uso and Jay Uso sitting out. So it was just 3 men in the ring. A triple threat between 3 men for tag team championships. Seems weird. But anyway, that's what happened because The Miz fell ill. And what we got was really good. It was a massive spot fest. All right, there was just people jumping off ladders being thrown over the bloody ring apron onto people that are laying on the... just crazy shit. At one point, John Morrison rope walked from one corner of the ring to the other and then does a Starship Pain to... I don't even know if you would call it a Starship Pain. Grabs the guy that's on the other turnbuckle and backflips with him onto a ladder, I believe it was. Would you do that? I wouldn't. But it was amazing. And yes, some idiot online goes, oh yeah, how many times did they do to take that? How many takes did they do for that one move? Who cares? You're pre-recording WrestleMania, you do it as many times as you can. You make it perfect. Because at the end of the day, when it's all edited together, we don't know. Could have been 1 take. We don't know. Could have been 2. Could have been 3. Could have been 8. We got the take that worked, and it looked fantastic. And it doesn't change the fact that they put their bodies on the line and were jumping on ladders, as you would not. So this match was, you couldn't take your eyes off it. At this point in the show, this was the most shocking thing we'd seen in terms of just pure entertainment. Things that you're watching on, I can't believe what I'm watching. Even though, how many times have we seen a ladder match? So many. But this really took it to a new level. John Morrison really proved his worth here as a singles competitor. Since coming back a couple of months ago, just before the Royal Rumble, he's sort of just been tagged up with The Miz and not being allowed to really shine as a singles competitor because Miz is such a star. But this really reminded everybody of just the skill that he has in the ring. I wouldn't be surprised if you see the titles dropped in the near future and maybe an intercontinental run for John Morrison coming out of this, because he definitely brought to the table what made this match so unforgettable. A lot of the high spots. And the finish was... I didn't mind it. I messaged my mate Lucas straight after and I said, look, I didn't mind that finish. Something different from a ladder match. Because, how often do you get it where it's just one guy up the top and he maybe knocks someone else off the other ladder and then he's just there and he pulls down the titles off the chain or whatever. Usually that's how it will finish. This one, all three men have their hands on the titles and then Kofi Kingston and Jimmy Uso punch John Morrison, who then falls backwards off a ladder. Huge fall off a ladder. But they didn't realize that he had the side of the titles, which were the sort of buttoned up, clipped together part of the titles, therefore holding on, falling backwards, and unclipping the titles, pulling them down, therefore retaining his and The Miz's WWE SmackDown Tag Team Championships. Creative, different, I didn't mind it. Didn't mind it at all. Something different. So that match was unreal. Bleacher Report gave that 4 stars, which I think was definitely fair. Definitely not a 5-star match, but hell of an entertaining match at that. Next one, we had night 1. This is going to go on for a while if I keep talking about all these matches like this. Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins, which was a really good match. All right, Seth Rollins he had that heel turn a couple months ago, and then he's sort of been looking for the perfect foil to complement that. And he's been teamed up with Owens in terms of trying to get that going. So those two have been going at it for the last couple of months, and this was sort of what felt like a really satisfying payoff. Really satisfying payoff. You saw Owens, who probably hasn't had the WrestleMania moment he's deserved yet, probably get one here. The match sort of went in a weird way at first because it ended quite quick by Seth Rollins just getting himself disqualified within what was probably the first 5 minutes of the match. They were brawling on the outside. Seth reaches over, grabs the ring bell, smacks Kevin Owens over the head with it, and gets disqualified. And I was really disappointed. I was sending out messages being like, well, that's it? This match was looking all right. And then why did they end it like that? That seemed silly and abrupt. Luckily, apparently at WrestleMania, wrestlers can make their own rules, and Kevin Owens demanded the match be restarted and that Seth Rollins get his ass back to the ring, which thankfully he obliged. And they went back and they restarted the match. And from there, it sort of became Kevin Owens taking over a bit more. He got the upper hand. Before you know it, they end up on a friggin' commentary table, and the spot where Owens jumps off the WrestleMania sign, takes Seth through the table, the announce table, was a real badass spot. And that right there was probably Kevin Owens' WrestleMania moment. I will remember that. It was really, eye-catching, I guess. Like something that it's a memory trigger going forward. Do you remember Seth Rollins and Kevin Owens from WrestleMania 36? Oh, that was on No Crowd. Yeah, didn't Owens jump off the sign and go through? Yeah, no, I remember. So it's one of those moments, one of those ones where you can imagine there being a wrestling toy figure action pack, battle packs, I think they call them. They'll have the announce table, they'll have Rollins in his white pants, which, by the way, I love when Rollins, it's usually always a heel Rollins, pulls out the white pants. It's like that you got to be real arrogant and confident to wear white. It's like in sport, in AFL, if an AFL player in the early 2000s would wear white boots, they'd be like, oh God, bit up himself, isn't he? Now, these days, it's a green shoe. But the white is a confident, sort of arrogant, heel type color, whereas Owens gets around more like that Austin style, where it's all black, it's all very basic, more relatable. Everyone can relate. Those two put on a great match. It was good. I love heel Rollins. Love him. He's probably my favorite version of Rollins. I love a babyface Rollins, but I love heel Rollins. And Owens was groused to see him get that WrestleMania moment, and more importantly, the WrestleMania win, which he got here, going over in what Bleacher Report also gave another 4-star match. So Bleacher Report at this point have only given 3s and 4s. So that's a pretty good start in terms of reviewing by one of the main reviewers for wrestling, which is Bleacher Report. This next one still sits strangely with me. Okay, so Universal Championship match was meant to be, and I'm never happy when this happens, Bill Goldberg. Why is Bill Goldberg, who is maybe one of the most overrated wrestlers of all time, a 2-3 trick pony at best? What's he got? A spear, a jackhammer, and a punch? And when I say a punch, I mean the punch that he'll throw before the spear to then land the jackhammer after that. So I'm not talking a fancy punch. That's Bill Goldberg. Boring, overrated, overhyped, old. Okay? Out of touch, out of step, out of skill. But he's a star. And he brings back those casual fans, those ones from the old days. And they do this pretty much every WrestleMania. Goldberg, for the last couple of years, has been back on the scene-ish. And here, hang on, I think I just turn that up. Okay, I think we're good. Yeah, Goldberg came back this year around Super Showdown, where he took on, who did he take on for the title? Oh, Bray Wyatt, of course, where they buried arguably the best character in WWE right now by letting Goldberg beat him for the title. Strange. Anyway, this match was meant to be Goldberg versus Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns, for those aware, for those that aren't, did have a battle with leukemia about a year ago, a bit more than a year ago, and he's been back for probably, I don't know, maybe he's been back for like roughly a year. He could have been, maybe a bit less. Anyway, with everything going on at the moment, immune system's being questioned, if you're unwell, probably be careful. Roman's like, nah, not going to take the risk. I'm not being a part of it. I'm pulling out of my WrestleMania match. This was not addressed by WWE, which I thought was shit ass. All right, this was pretty much, it was broken by Bleacher Report and other various news sources, and then confirmed by Roman Reigns on his Instagram page. Then, on SmackDown, how did WWE address it? And I understand, they'd filmed numerous weeks of wrestling. They could have still just been upfront with why he pulled out. On SmackDown, we got a new image when they're going through all the matches of, and Goldberg, the Universal Champion, will be taking on the monster among men, Braun Strowman. And that was it. That was it. They moved on. And I was like, okay, we all know why, but maybe there's people out there that don't know why. Don't insult their intelligence by not addressing it. Just say why. Why is Roman Reigns now no longer in that match? Let's be honest. We're all fully aware of what's happening in the world around us. Bring a bit of reality into your storytelling, okay? Anyway, who knows why Braun was chosen? Because, he's big and he's a monster and he's a believable threat to Goldberg's title, I guess. But there was no rhyme or reason as to why he was picked or how he got the opportunity. But, we just have to accept that. So this match was a write-off for me. Didn't really care about it. To be honest, didn't expect it to go the way it did necessarily with Strowman going over. Strowman's your new Universal Champion. He beat Goldberg. Now, you might be like, yeah, but it was obvious that Roman was going to beat Goldberg and take the title anyway. Yeah, it was, but that's Roman Reigns. And it would have made more storytelling sense for Roman to go over. Now, what you've got to think about, right, is this. Who knows how many episodes of SmackDown we're going to get coming out of WrestleMania with everything going on in the world right now. There might be a short break coming up, a month, 2 months off where there's no wrestling on TV. If they're not able to film, there might not be. So the thought process that somebody pointed out going into this WrestleMania was, when they come back, aren't you going to want your sure thing, star-powered champions firing and the ones being the ones to be holding the belts? Abso-friggin-lutely. Really good point. I don't for a second think that Strowman can't be champion. I think he actually absolutely can be. I'm just surprised that Vince McMahon had the balls to allow him to be champion coming back on the back end of this coronavirus thing. And I said the word. God damn it. I wasn't going to say it. So I was surprised. Strowman went over, defeated Goldberg. Thank God, hopefully, and it's not going to be, but hopefully this is the last time we see Goldberg and or he's near a title. But it won't be. He'll be back and he'll win a title again, and I'll be mad again. But let's move on. Let's just forget about that match. Strowman, first time being world champion, good for him. Really good for him. You know, I could care less at this point. But let's move on to the main event of night one, okay? We're getting there. We're getting through this. This was the Boneyard Match between The Undertaker and AJ Styles. And let me set the scene, right? So everyone, you're all probably thinking, for those that aren't up to date with it, oh, The Undertaker, isn't he a legend? But, God, he must be old. Yeah, he's old as. And he's been garbage for a couple of years. And maybe garbage is a strong word. Okay, I instantly regretted that when it came out. The guy can still tell a story. Hell of a story. He's still fascinating and interesting when that dong hits and, you know, his music, and he walks out and it takes him 10 minutes to get to the ring because he walks so slow, deliberately, not because he's old. The aura of The Undertaker is still very much intact, but it is fading, and it has been fading for some time because when he gets in the ring, he's unable to execute the various moves that we've come to learn and expect from The Undertaker. The choke slam. You know, at this point, he's almost struggling to lift smaller talent, smaller wrestlers, not even the big guys. You should see him. I mean, him and Goldberg had a match at Super Showdown early last year, that was, you wanted to try and, I mean, I'm still trying to forget it. It was terrible. Between the two of them, they looked like I could have had a better match with my brother on a big stage. And we don't know how to wrestle. These guys just couldn't pull it off. The tombstone seems almost beyond him to be able to pull out. And therefore, leading up to this match, all he'd been doing was choke slams because it was, I don't know, I think in his eyes easier, but God, it didn't look easier. It looked just as bad. So, the thing was, he's having a match with AJ Styles, who AJ Styles is one of those other three that I mentioned earlier that could probably be in the conversation of, shit, maybe they're the best wrestler in the world right now. Maybe that is it. That he's considered the modern day HBK, Shawn Michaels. So you kind of found yourself sitting there going, God, I wish this match was 5 years ago. Would have been awesome. Would have been great. But it's not. So everyone went into this with limited expectations. And then there was the whole issue with the crowd, all right? The crowd out the window, and then you start hearing, oh, WWE are planning on doing some different matches on closed sets and locations where they're going to film things a bit different to try and make it interesting and more engaging. This was the first of those matches we saw that gave us an idea of what that meant. The Boneyard Match. Now, when that was brought up on Raw a couple of weeks ago by AJ Styles in a promo, he's like, I challenge you to a Boneyard Match. You were like, does he mean a graveyard match? Because Undertaker's had them. Does he mean a casket match? He's had them. What the hell is a Boneyard Match? He had to have stuffed up. That sounds outrageous, a Boneyard Match. There was heaps of hesitation going into this match. A boatload. I was so nervous because I was like, I haven't watched a good Undertaker thing in ages. I love AJ Styles and I'm nervous he's going to get dragged down by all of this. And not to mention, if WWE's little creation here of whatever this Boneyard Match is going to look like, being on a location, presumably in a graveyard somewhere, if that doesn't look good and it's not well received, holy shit, they're going to look silly. And that's before night 2. Thank God this was the best thing that WWE has produced in years. And that I have maybe seen, in terms of seeing something where I just am gobsmacked at what I just watched, ever in WWE. I was blown away. And I wasn't alone. The internet exploded for this match. And it feels weird calling it a match, because what we watched was a freaking movie. It was a movie. I'm not kidding. It had credits at the start, like opening title cards. This was, I don't know who, it felt like they had a Hollywood director come in to direct this, and they may very well have. Now, it's also worth noting, reading afterwards and finding out who was involved in this match, it became no surprise that we got the epic encounter that we did between these two. The Undertaker, arguably one of the greatest minds in the business ever. AJ Styles, one of the greatest talents, and up there with greatest minds ever, greatest performers ever. Triple H. It appears Triple H booked this match. All right, he was on location, working through it with them, and coming up with all these ideas. Now, what I recommend doing while you're listening to this, pull up on YouTube, just type in Boneyard Match, Undertaker, AJ Styles, and you'll be able to pull up, there's a highlights video, right? And you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about, like how cinematic this is. And that it sort of gives you an idea that wrestling can actually be more than just two people in the ring in that traditional sense, which it has been for years. And yes, okay, I can already hear the people that are yelling at me saying, oh, but Matt Hardy's been doing this for years now with the Broken Universe. Absolutely, he has. Is there part of me that goes, well, geez, Matt Hardy must be pissed off? Absolutely. Matt Hardy, one of the Hardy boys, Matt and Jeff Hardy, Matt Hardy reinvented himself years ago as Broken Matt Hardy, who essentially a lot of his matches took place as cinematic films like this one, where it's not in front of a crowd. It's a crowd watching a big screen in the arena, weirdly. And they're really good, and they're really creative, and they're really weird. Now, this wasn't weird, what The Undertaker and AJ Styles did. They stripped it back. This was like an old Western movie meets a horror movie, which is exactly what we should have expected when we saw how it began. So it begins with a hearse pulling into a cemetery, and you're like, okay, wow, The Undertaker's here, which was weird because in the lead up to this match, you'd seen The Undertaker, but he hadn't looked like The Undertaker. He hadn't looked like the dead man. He looked like the guy that plays The Undertaker, Mark Calloway, also known as American Badass. Okay, Mark Calloway looks a lot like American Badass Undertaker from the early 2000s, the Attitude Era, where he'd come out in the chopper, on the old motorbike, you know, like a cool dude. So we see the hearse pulling in, and you're like, oh shit, okay, they're going to go the Undertaker route here. And the two druids, or whatever you call those guys in the black cloaks, and they get out, and they pull the hearse, the coffin out of the hearse, and they rest it on the ground, and it blows open, and AJ Styles gets out, and his music hits, and it's friggin' cool. He's playing the ultimate heel, the bad guy. He's like, come on, Taker, this isn't scary. Look at this shit. This is fine. He doesn't care. He's walking around this bloody graveyard, and he's looking unfazed by it. Now, I'm going to give more credit to this next bit, because at first I was disappointed when the Undertaker's music hits. There's this music that comes on, and you're like, oh shit, I hope this isn't the Undertaker's music. What is this? Are we going to get American Badass here? I hope so. And it cuts to streets away, going up what looked like, a cliff face or something, these roads, windy roads. And you hear a motorbike rumble, and you're like, holy shit, we're going to get the American Badass. Keep rolling. If you remember it from the 2000s, that's what I was wanting. That's what I was expecting. We didn't get that in terms of we didn't get the music. The entrance music for The Undertaker was new. They're going with something new. And to an unknowing fan like me, I was kind of looking for the nostalgia of it all. I was wanting Limp Bizkit or, whoever one of his songs used to be. He had a couple of different ones. But it was what I've now come to learn was a Metallica song. And people who are big into the Metallica scene were like, holy shit, this is badass. So, I'll call play on. Fine. Okay. Went a little over my head, but if you say so, if you say that's great, cool. Awesome. It was cool to see The Undertaker as American Badass, bandana over the head, on the chopper, fanging it. Just fanging it. On his way up to the graveyard. And he pulls in and he gets off. And what took place from there was nothing short of a bar fight between two blokes, but taking place in a graveyard. A graveyard that also was on the same... It was like a... what would you call it? I guess, what do they call that? The groundskeeper of a graveyard. I guess you would say that it was where the groundskeeper would live. So like a house that's on the site of a graveyard. And it's like that old shed with an old design house. Colonial era? No, don't know. Could be wrong, could be right there. Either way, it was an old, dingy, like scary looking graveyard as it should be, with a scary looking house. And it had everything. It had everything, this match. Taker, even as the American Badass comes out, we're still seeing shades of the Dead Man, all right, throughout this match. AJ Styles is on top for a lot of this match. They go back and forth a bit. AJ gets on top, then Taker gets on top, and then there's some interference from the rest of AJ Styles' like crew, his posse, which is the OC, Gallows and Anderson. They turn up and they're like, "Hey, Dead Man," and they fucking start, trying to like lay into him a little bit. Taker deals with them, but then as he goes after him again, this lights up from the inside of a barn that is on the same location, just away from a couple of the graves. And then the walls of the barn fall down and there's druids. These guys, these men in the cloaks, the men that are there to carry out the coffins, or almost look like the Grim Reapers, which are usually pretty synonymous with The Undertaker. They're there. And they start walking towards The Undertaker. Undertaker just starts dropping druids. Starts laying boots in, laying fists in. I think he choke slams one at one point. Somebody raised a good point online. What did Gallows and Anderson say to the druids to get them to side with them instead of the Dead Man? Now, you could... Look. As I said before, at this point we're watching a Hollywood movie. You got to allow some... We're also watching wrestling, people. Okay? As much as we like a bit of reality with our wrestling, at this point what we're getting is that friggin' good that you don't care about any type of little detail like that might make you go, oh, hang on. That doesn't make sense. Forget it. Such a minor detail, doesn't matter. Undertaker's dropping druids. He's dropping the OC. He's right on top of AJ, but then AJ comes back. AJ, long story short, I don't want to give too much away because you should really go watch it. The moment where Undertaker finally is beaten up, he's bloodied, he's battered, AJ is just talking smack, talking garbage to him. Kicks him straight into the open grave. Now, this is essentially what we're going for here is a buried alive match. And we all know it's a bit magical, it's a bit unrealistic, and that's fine. Because actually, they do a good job here of playing into that. So Undertaker's in the grave, and we're looking at him, and AJ's like, yeah, gotcha, or whatever. I don't know. Can't remember the words for word of it all. AJ jumps on the tractor that's got the sort of the scoop at the front of it. I'm not a man's man at all, so that I don't even want to say tray because I know that's wrong. But the thing where the shovel, the big giant shovel that's on the top of at the front of a tractor, it's got a massive heap of dirt in it, and AJ turns on the tractor in order to lift up and drop the dirt on Taker in the grave, essentially burying him alive. As he turns it on, The Undertaker now appears behind AJ Styles in that sort of mythical way of, is this guy alive? Is he dead? Is this a ghost? I don't understand. You were just in the grave. How are you now out of the grave and behind me? Playing into the Dead Man, we got to see through that a bit of the Dead Man character. That's very synonymous with the Dead Man. The lights going out, Undertaker being somewhere else, that sort of thing. Again, things they're able to do due to doing the Hollywood cinematic style match. And you go with it. You're like, holy shit, he's there. Oh my God. It's like a horror movie. Just when you think they're getting away from the monster, suddenly there they are again. So it gives you, there's that little bit of a fright. Oh, shit, there he is. And then the tables turn from there. Taker was all over him. Taker was almost rejuvenated from that almost brief encounter with being buried alive to a point where it was all downhill from there for AJ Styles. You know, it ends with Taker getting AJ, before he throws AJ in, AJ's just begging and pleading with him not to bury him, don't do this, like he was sorry. Some decent acting from AJ Styles, but at this point it's all the Undertaker show. Okay, this is where we're getting old school badass Undertaker. And Undertaker looked freaking great in this match. He looked young, he looked fit, he looked strong as hell. And yeah, you can do that, and you can help him look and play to his strengths through the magic of Hollywood, through editing, through shooting, through shooting different angles, all that sort of stuff. He gets AJ in the hole the hole where they usually put the coffin. And Undertaker buries AJ alive, and all he does is put that massive scoop of dirt. He dumps it on top of him, and you see AJ's hand still moving or whatever. So you know that like it's more of a symbolic win. It's not a literal we've just buried somebody alive. It's not that. It's the symbolic I've just beaten you to a point where you were so hurt, you were so bad, I was able to physically put you in a grave and dump dirt on you and bury you in it and walk away. And I like that because it's, in the old days, a buried alive match with The Undertaker would be somebody getting fully covered in dirt and, okay, guys, they're now dead. And then they'd turn up the next week on Raw and ready for their next storyline. And you're like, oh, geez, give it a bit of time. This, I won't be thrilled, but if AJ takes a week or two off and then comes back and he talks about it, that'll be fine because obviously there wasn't enough dirt for him to not be able to pull himself or somebody easily pull him out of. Okay? That's the reality of it. Great match for me, 5 stars. Best thing I've seen this WrestleMania to this point. Night 2 of WrestleMania. My God. Let me have a drink here because we're pushing up on an hour. I haven't stopped so far, and it's just me here. And I haven't edited this. That's better. Night 2 of WrestleMania. Expectations were high. Night 1 was really good. Okay? Really good. Especially coming off the Undertaker match where I spent the day after, that night and the day after, just reading up on all the praise that it was getting. It was getting so much praise. So going into this, I was like, well, shit, I feel like they've sort of shown their best hand at the start, and therefore I'm not sure how they're going to follow this up. My concern was there was a bunch of really big matches left on this card with really big names, and I was just hoping they were going to be able to deliver for those guys. Now, this night you had Edge returning for his first singles match since being forced to retire in 2011. So you wanted to see him do well. You wanted to see Bray Wyatt do well because he got buried by Goldberg a couple months ago. Really poor booking by WWE to a point where you're like, why build this one star for so long only to just, have him shit on by Goldberg? And you had the championship match between Brock Lesnar and Drew McIntyre, Drew Galloway, I was going to say, where, this is Drew McIntyre's a guy that's finally getting his opportunity to be the star, the guy in the WWE after being in and out of the company for 11 years, and it's going to be in front of no fans. So you kind of wanted Night 2 to still really deliver. And it started with an absolute bang. All right, so what we got straight out of the gate, NXT Women's Championship match between Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley. Now, Rhea Ripley's from Australia, from Adelaide in Australia, and she's one of the big champions in WWE, so that's awesome. And she's real young. I think she's 21, 22 or something, but she is in the best way possible, a monster. Like she has everything about, she has all the looks that a WWE superstar needs. She's really built. She's got the big frame, and going up against Charlotte Flair, they looked really evenly matched. Charlotte Flair is really tall, really intimidating, really imposing. Rhea Ripley looked the part. And this match was really surprising to me. It delivered more than I thought it would. There'd been question marks over Rhea Ripley. You know, is she able to sort of live up to the big stage that is WrestleMania? And to be honest, those concerns were more her ability to go out and perform in front of 80,000 people. That was taken away, which probably played into her favor a little bit better. Okay, these NXT people like Rhea Ripley and Shayna Baszler, they haven't had that exposure to those big audiences yet. So the element of stage fright and, you know, forgetting what you're meant to be doing, losing yourself in those moments, it's eliminated by giving them their first exposure to WrestleMania on that smaller stage, well, the smallest of stages with no fans. And this match was really good, really solid, awesome match. Charlotte Flair, you can never, ever fault her in terms of her performances. She is the best technical women's wrestler in the world, and that was on display here. She, regardless of what you got from Rhea Ripley here, Charlotte would have had the ability to carry her. But I thought what Rhea Ripley offered, well, she really held her own. Now, they told a really great story of Charlotte being really calculating by just focusing on the one knee the whole time of Rhea Ripley. And, you know, knowing Charlotte Flair, we know why, because she's looking for that patented super, what do you call it, the figure 4 leg lock, which was made famous by her dad, Rick, and she uses the figure 4 leg lock into the figure 8 leg lock, and so the whole match, she's just working that knee. And Rhea Ripley told a really good story. She was in agony. She was in so much pain. She's screaming, and that was sort of another thing that could be forgotten in this whole no audience, was that you were able to hear the actual wrestlers, the talent in the ring, whether it be the talking between themselves in terms of the smack talk and the abuse and the demeaning and belittling of each other, or the sound effects of the groans and the grunts and the like screams of pain and in agony. It adds so much to the story being told, especially in this instance where you've got Charlotte Flair who's just hammering away. She's just pinpointing this one knee, and it's telling that story of, you know, she's wearing her down. God, how much more can that knee really take? And then when she finally locks in that figure 4 into the figure 8 leg lock, and it's locked in the middle of the ring, as much as a great match as it was, and Rhea Ripley put up an awesome performance. It was sort of surprising to see Charlotte Flair, who, you know, hadn't been in NXT for, I think, 6 years now. She last had that NXT Women's Championship 6 years ago. And again, if you're not that familiar, NXT up until probably late last year, when NXT moved to primetime on a network, it was seen as the developmental system. So having Charlotte Flair, one of the biggest wrestlers in the women's division, move to NXT now, essentially that's what's going to happen. She's NXT Women's Champion. She's going to be on NXT. It further legitimizes NXT as a legitimate TV show on the same level as Raw and SmackDown. So that was a really good match. Charlotte Flair, once again, delivers in spades. All right, what do we have next? We had Aleister Black, Bobby Lashley. Look, I'm not going to spend much time talking about this. There was arguably no build-up to this match. There might have been something on Raw this past week. Totally forgettable. Aleister Black's a huge talent. He's going to be great. Bobby Lashley could care less about it at this point. We never got the payoff with Rusev for the whole Lana thing. Lana's still there and, you know, looking stunning as always, because at this point, that's what she is. She's a manager. She's meant to be showing sex appeal and stuff, and she doesn't do any in-ring stuff. She's there for that. She's to be the good-looking distraction, and she does her job well. This match, I'm not going to spend any more time on. Aleister Black went over, as he should have, against Bobby Lashley. Bobby Lashley could be a more dominant monster heel, but they don't take him seriously for some reason. That was given a 2.5 star, which was all right. Otis and Dolph Ziggler, huge match in terms of a weird, different storyline coming out of SmackDown the last couple months. We've got Otis, who is this brute, ugly-looking, as JBL called him, a farm animal-looking character. Just not, it's the classic, what do you call it, Beauty and the Beast type storyline, this, where Dolph Ziggler is the heel bad guy who's great-looking, got abs, charming, charismatic, funny, and he is stealing the love of Otis's life that is Mandy Rose, who's this gorgeous blonde bombshell, way out of Otis's league. But this is the story of, sometimes the nice guy wins. And that's what they've been building to for months. They finally got here with this, where Dolph Ziggler had taken Mandy for the last couple of weeks, and Otis was trying to win her back. And here, the lies of Dolph Ziggler get exposed, and Mandy now sees clearly, and ends up with going back and helping Otis win and beat Dolph Ziggler, which is a massive thing for Otis, who is one half of a tag team. Really, that's what he is until this whole Mandy Rose storyline happened, due to his unrealistic looks in terms of being able to attain somebody like that, and probably a Vince McMahon sitting there going, this is funny shit. He could never get her. And that's what led to this storyline, and Otis gets a WrestleMania moment out of it by kissing Mandy Rose after he beats Dolph Ziggler and gets the girl of his dreams. So, classic storytelling, pretty good payoff after a couple of months of, or a month or two. This got a 4.5 star by Bleacher Report, with Otis defeating Dolph Ziggler and getting the girl. Tell you what, the kiss at the end was a bit awkward though. You could tell she's still not that into the idea of having to kiss him, and he's way too into the idea of kissing her. Bit of open mouth on his end, which he reluctantly engaged in. Then we got what was probably my most anticipated match of WrestleMania leading up to it, which was the last man standing match between Edge and Randy Orton. And here we get another look at WWE doing something different to try and keep things interesting. And here, the last man standing match, I think it maybe took place in the actual physical ring for a minute and a half of what was at least a half an hour match, if not 45-minute match between Edge and Randy Orton. This match ended up just taking place around the whole of the Performance Center, which is where they were recording WrestleMania. So you see them go into the gym at one point. They're punching on in the gym. It was like a back door into giving people a look into the facility, the training facility that WWE have, and it's impressive as hell. These two end up fighting on where else? A conference room table, like a boardroom table. Edge takes a high spot off the roof, like clinging onto some shit on the roof, and then drops himself down onto the conference room table where Randy Orton's laying. That was a cool spot. They then they're punching on through like the kitchenette area, and then they're at the back in the car park where there's all the the sort of the, what do they call them? The trailers, the massive trucks the things that the trucks tow. Like sort of like if you saw a shopping center truck, like a Woolworths or something, those massive trucks, but they've got them for like WWE production gear and that sort of stuff. Semi-trailer. That's it. I think that's what it's called. After like 45 minutes of various locations, all types of shit being thrown at each other, they hit each other with everything. And this was another one of those matches where the no crowd really played into it. Yeah, it was disappointing Edge's first match back wasn't able to be in front of a massive crowd, which would have given him a huge ovation. And obviously they would have had what would have been probably a 5-star match anyway. This was the next best thing. And WWE so far in WrestleMania has done amazing at executing the next best thing to the highest possible standard it could. That's what we got here. Last man standing match, taking us to different areas and environments that we haven't seen before, allowing these guys to use all different types of weapons against each other, makeshift weapons out of all these various objects, taking high spots in places we'd never normally see. Whether that be Edge spearing Randy Orton on top of a semi-trailer. What else is there? Randy Orton had Edge in the back of a ute and drop him on his head on the concrete outside of the ute. Like, that sort of shit where it's like, well, that's, it's different. We haven't seen this. So it was cool. These two were, like, again, with the no crowd and the selling of the injuries as they were coming up, or the impact of various shots or blows that each of them would take, was nothing short of, like, phenomenal in terms of how it added to the match. At one point, Randy Orton sounded like he was dying. He sounded like he was full on dying in terms of the agony, like that sort of shit. Like, it sounded painful. It was, they sold the shit out of everything that they did to each other. It is so good having Edge back. His music is arguably up there with the best music in terms of an entrance in front of a live crowd. So I want to see that again. But in terms of just having him back, this was unreal. Randy Orton is what they say, maybe the best wrestler, best of all time. Is largely what they say. He may very well be the best of all time. His technique, his skills, they are pristine, and he's incredibly safe, and he makes everyone look great. So having Edge paired up with Randy Orton in this made total sense in terms of the fact that Randy Orton was going to be able to take him through to a safe and or entertaining match all in one. These two are awesome. I would give this 4.5 star for sure, especially I'm not massive for the gimmick matches. So a last man standing match, usually I'm like, this will be long, and I don't really care that much about it because I would prefer to just see an easy, like a straightforward match. This was awesome. Everything they did to each other had me totally buying in. At one point in the middle of the match, I was like, this is going on a while. Like, I feel like they could wrap it up soon. And then they just went to another level, which I didn't think was going to be possible. And it captured my interest way more than what it already had, and I was just shocked that was able to happen. So Edge went over in his return, which he should have. He beat Orton with the symbolic 2-chair shot, which Orton had done to him weeks ago, which was a great sort of bow tie or ribbon on the story that they've just told for the last 2 months since the Royal Rumble. So really liked it. Next match was a toilet break match largely for me. Raw Tag Team title match. Just didn't care that much. Really enjoy the Street Profits. But when it's such a makeshift team that a tag team is up against, Austin Theory and Angel Garza, I mean, this wasn't meant to be the match. So I didn't really care that much. In the end, I mean, Bleacher Report gave this 2.5 star. Street Profits went over, as to be expected. I feel like I'm losing my voice. I've been talking that long. Street Profits went over Theory and Garza, who before today hadn't been a tag team. So no surprise there because, they're going up against a legit tag team. It was a rush match. Not too much to report on this one. Good to see the Street Profits get a WrestleMania win, though. I guess, if nothing else, hey. Next up was a bit of a surprise packet. Again, low expectations going into this one. Fatal 5-way elimination match for the SmackDown Women's Championship. You've got Bayley, Nia Jax, Tamina Snuka, not Nia Jax. Sasha Banks, and then, Lacey Evans and Naomi. Now, the SmackDown Women's Division, it's not that strong. Bayley's been carrying it as a heel, compared to her normal babyface. Sasha Banks is also a heel. They're sort of like a duo at the moment. But the match was fun. The match was actually better than I expected it to be. There was some good storytelling in terms of how... It was an elimination, obviously, so there was good stories in terms of how they got each person eliminated. Some decent build-ups. In the end, Bayley retained the title, which kind of surprised me. I kind of thought Sasha Banks was going to double cross her and cost her the championship and win it herself. We didn't get that, which was surprising. I thought that would be the natural way to go, but I kind of guessed that they're probably maybe saving that turn on from Sasha Banks turning on Bayley, saving that until there's a live audience there, given that when you do that, when you have two heels that are a team and then one turns on the other one, the aim is to then usually turn that heel that turned into a good person, or vice versa, depending if they're heel or face going into the match. Sort of harder to hit home that Sasha Banks would then be becoming a babyface or a good guy or a good woman if there's no crowd there to cheer her. So I guess they're probably trying to save that to make it more of a moment down the line. So it makes sense for Bayley to go over. No real issues there. Got a 4-star on Bleacher Report, which was, pretty good. Pretty good. Next, we had the Firefly Fun House match, and this is the follow-up. This is not a sequel, but sort of like when first Batman movie came out, and then you had other studios with other licenses going, well, maybe we could do something like that. This is WWE's alternate take to what we got in the Boneyard match the night before. My God, they did it again. Another match which was the one again. I don't. This was more of one of those like I don't. What did I just watch? This was freaking peculiar. It was. It didn't. Well, it made sense because if you're familiar at all with Bray Wyatt's character at the moment in the Firefly Fun House, there you go. I nailed it one go that time. And the Fiend, who is his alter ego, which is this monstrous heel, but kind of like anti-hero type thing, going up against John Cena, who is the ultimate like poster boy of WWE, the golden goose, the golden child of Vince McMahon, essentially. I went in hesitant because I was like, well, I've seen the Boneyard match, the movie-esque storytelling and filming of a match that isn't actually taking place in a ring that much. And I'm just, I think I'm more speechless about this one than the Boneyard match. I think this was more fun. Almost. This was, I mean, no pun intended, Firefly Fun House. But holy crap, the way Bray Wyatt and John Cena told this story, the whole message going to this match was 6 years ago at WrestleMania 30, they had a match against each other, and Bray Wyatt was this up-and-coming massive star. And then he had this match with John Cena, and they put John Cena over. John Cena won the match, right? I mean, looking behind the curtain, they've decided, John Cena, bigger star, let's put him over. And it kind of buried Bray Wyatt a little bit in terms of similar to how it could have buried him with Goldberg winning against him the other month. You kind of felt, they've just shit on everything they've done to build up this character that is Bray Wyatt, and they've just had John Cena beat him clean. 6 years later, you fast forward and you get the Firefly Fun House match, which is The Fiend or Bray Wyatt challenging John Cena to this style match, which John Cena has been in the wrestling industry for 20 years, and he's like, I don't know what that is. No one knows what that is. It's, again, a match that they've been able to do due to the current climate and situation that they're faced with in having to keep things interesting. Now, every week on Raw and SmackDown, Bray Wyatt comes out and cuts his promo from the Firefly Fun House. And it's like this, it's almost like a kid show. Remember Blue's Clues? It's almost like that, where it's this character over the top. There's all the sound effects of like, whoop, oh, and like people, the cues that they use in children's TV to teach kids good and bad and be happy at this moment and be sad here. This is a good thing. This is a bad thing. That sort of thing. But it's done almost like satire. And from the standpoint that the person hosting the show, Bray Wyatt, is a madman. And not only is he a madman, but he's, I guess virtually you would call it bipolar, as he's got an alter ego. The man that comes out that he can't control. That is the Fiend, the monster within him. Super cool concept. Might sound really confusing if you're not familiar with it, but I'm guessing you probably watch WrestleMania if you're still listening at this point. Go jump on YouTube, research some of Bray Wyatt and the Fiend and that sort of thing. You'll get an idea. Anyway, going into this match, John Cena returns. He's like, I'm not going to have a match this year. It's time for new talent to go over, that sort of thing. Bray Wyatt challenges into this. So I'm going into this and I'm like, shit, they set the bar so high with the Boneyard match. And I know that this is apparently another match where they've filmed on a location and they've they've tried to make it more like a movie. This was so different to the Boneyard match, all while being so in the same vein as the Boneyard match. This was kind of like a love letter to if you've been a wrestling fan for your whole life, or you've been a John Cena fan for your whole life, or you're just really familiar with the Bray Wyatt story and the John Cena story together or separate. They took things from all out of the wrestling history. You saw Bray Wyatt torment John Cena by putting him in all of these various states of mind, I want to say. By John Cena entering in the Firefly Fun House, it's like he didn't realize he was entering into a reality unlike what we know. In this reality, Bray Wyatt has the ability to transport him into different settings, into different time periods, and control everything John Cena's doing in those moments. So, for instance, you saw Bray Wyatt transport back into the era of WCW Nitro and bring out Bray Wyatt sort of posing as Eric Bischoff back in the day and bringing out what would have been in WCW, Hulk Hogan, but bringing out John Cena in full NWO gear, playing the guitar, sort of picturing and positioning John Cena as, the Hulk Hogan of this era. Like, this is you. And putting Cena through this whole test of things, whether it be reliving his debut, which they recreated in the same gear that John Cena wore against Kurt Angle, with Bray Wyatt playing the role of Kurt Angle in that moment, or an old Macho Man Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan cage promo thing where they're like, Hulk Hogan's just pumping iron, and instead this time it's John Cena pumping iron, controlling everything. All the moves of John Cena was making were controlled by Bray Wyatt, and the settings in which they found themselves were controlled by Bray Wyatt, all in which sort of disillusioning John Cena to a point where he's out of control of his own body. He's lost control of his thoughts, his emotions, his physical ability. He's lost all control. And so Bray Wyatt, he's entered into this world, the Firefly Fun House. I'm getting better at it throughout this, with Bray Wyatt to a point where he's played into his strengths. He's in Bray Wyatt's land now, and he can't control it. I can't even explain this. I don't think anyone will. I'm very curious to listen to different podcasts and forms of media that try and explain what the hell the Firefly Funhouse was, but I don't think there's a way to explain it without you just going on YouTube, searching it in, and getting the highlights from WWE to actually understand what the hell this thing looked like. Was it better than the Boneyard? No, but the Boneyard Match and the Firefly Funhouse are both by far two of the most unique and bizarre and coolest and memorable things that I've personally seen in WWE. And so much so that it has excited me as a fan, again, like nothing really has lately. At least the last couple of years anyway. These are like nothing else. Go and watch the Firefly Funhouse. And, I mean, the result was The Fiend or Bray Wyatt beat John Cena. That's how it ended. Bleacher Report gave this, as they did the Boneyard Match, what did they give it? An A+ with extra credit. So that says a lot. Okay, so like a 5-star plus some. They don't give them out. No one gives them out. But these two matches, the Boneyard and Firefly Funhouse, both so deserving of it. And then we close out WrestleMania 36, the one with no fans, with the WWE Championship match between Drew McIntyre and Brock Lesnar. Now, we all knew how this was probably going to go, all right? This was going to be Drew's big moment in front of the big crowd where he's going to hold his championship up and he's going to be sort of embraced as the new big star, the new big draw in WWE, their big new poster guy. He's got the look, he's got the charisma, he's got the, he'd now have the championship, and he'd also have beaten the beast that is Brock Lesnar. The hardest thing to conquer in all of WWE has been positioned as Brock Lesnar over all these years. And look, we got pretty much a Brock Lesnar match. Brock Lesnar put on a longer match than what he's usually inclined to do. The match went for probably 5-6 minutes, and it consisted of finishes. Each bloke just given their best finishing move to each other numerous times. The first F5 that Lesnar hit on Drew McIntyre kicked out of at 1, which was, that's pretty shocking. They don't usually allow that to happen. They don't usually have that happen. So for Drew McIntyre to be able to kick out at 1 sort of put shock on Lesnar and Paul Heyman's face, which is really good storytelling because you're like, holy shit, if Lesnar can't get this guy down for longer than 1 after an F5, what's it going to take? 3 or 4 F5s later, McIntyre's still kicking out. The tide quickly changed. McIntyre gets on top, gives 4 claymores to him, claymore kicks to the head, which Lesnar sells incredibly well. Lesnar, being an ex-MMA fighter, UFC fighter, just lets McIntyre kick him straight in the face. He doesn't give a shit. There's no hand being put in front. He's all about selling that claymore kick to make him look legitimate too, because he's got the reputation of being a tough guy. He doesn't want to lose that shit. And so, we see him cover him, and then, the 3 count, and you've got your new WWE champion in Drew McIntyre. It's a real shame for Drew McIntyre, who was first brought into WWE in 2009, I think it was, and he was the chosen one by Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon had all these grand plans for Drew McIntyre, saying he was going to be a future champion, and then it all just went to crap. And, Drew McIntyre was 21 at the time. He was young, probably wasn't ready for it. Ended up in this little gimmicky, crappy comedy act called 3MB, which was sort of, they were the beat-up guys, they were the ones that would be fed to your Brock Lesnar's and all those, just to be beaten up and thrown to the curb and make other people look good. He then went away for years, came back through NXT, and he'd totally changed his look, and he'd gotten way more bulky and muscly, and he looked like a legitimate champion, like a threat, like a real badass, a Scottish badass. And he's climbed his way back, and he should have had that moment in front of 80,000 people where he got to be embraced and received and put up on a pedestal as the new face of the WWE. He still gets his moment. He's still going to be remembered as becoming WWE champion, and he's still going to get that push. When all the fans return, you're still going to have Drew McIntyre as your champion. That's not going to change. They're not going to do another title change between now and then. So Drew McIntyre's your new WWE champion, and I love it. I think he is exactly what can draw in an adult fan base and also be appealing to kids as somebody to look up to, but men can look at him and go, he's a badass, this guy. He's tough as they come, and he's got that cool Scottish accent, which makes him seem something about a Scottish accent that makes him seem about 10% tougher, and he's got it in spades. So that just about caps up WrestleMania 36. Okay? One hell of a show by WWE. They've given all of their fans, and even maybe some fans that had gone wandering for a couple of years, a reason to come back and forget about the shit that's going on in the world for what they spread over 2 days, 3.5 hours each day. They gave people the chance to not only escape for that time, but also walk away with stuff on either end of those days, with things to talk about, with things that they want to go and find people and go, did you see this? Did you see that? Sharing things on Facebook, reading up on, how's the Undertaker match being reviewed? How was that Firefly Fun House reviewed? Are people excited about Drew McIntyre being giving people something else to talk about, something else to distract themselves with for 2 days, and they should not be faulted for that. And I don't even know why I'm feeling the need to defend them, because they're certainly not being criticized for it. So thanks, WWE, for a good 2 days that I've just had. I've had a lot of fun, seen some things that I'll never forget, seen some of my most favorite moments from wrestling, things that have already become gifts and have entered into the world, the wider world of pop culture, through 6.5 hours of content they produced over the last 2 days to help people forget about the crap that everyone's going through right now. Fantastic stuff. If you don't have the WWE Network, highly recommend going and getting it. What else are you spending money on at the moment? Nothing. So for the next, month, spend $14 on getting the WWE Network, and, it's another thing of entertainment. Go back and watch all the old WrestleManias. All that sort of stuff. They got everything on there. Great distraction is pro wrestling. WrestleMania 36 delivers in spades. I'm wrapped with it. Love to know what you think of it. So let us know either on the comments, on social media, on the Cheeky Leprechaun social media. Don't forget you can hit us up on the all-new YouTube channel, which is dedicated just to this podcast, the Pop Culture Experience. It is on YouTube. More on that coming in the not too distant future. But yeah, you can find us on YouTube. You can watch all the podcasts or listen to the podcast on YouTube, as well as some other videos that go up there. And of course, you can find all the catalogue of the podcast through our website at cheekyleprechaun.com.au, or of course, subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify. Subscribe, leave a review, whatever you want to do. Love to hear it all. I'm Dan O'Kelly. It's been another edition of the Pop Culture Report. And look, I'll talk to you soon. Have a good week.
This has been a Cheeky Leprechaun production.